video from our sponsor for today's session. As most of you know, Zenlist is a partner we're working closely with these days. And so I'm just going to let them take it away for the beginning of today's webinar.
Zenlist is a cross-compatible, mobile-first, client-facing, and lightning-fast application that's going to allow you and your clients to stay connected and collaborative every step of the home buying process. You'll stay organized by managing your clients in multiple listing feeds. Notifications and activity alerts, behavioral insights allow you to stay connected and on top of what your clients are actually doing and looking at. And you and your clients will both have access to create advanced level MLS quality searches, which include private listings. Zenlist Tour functionality allows you to create, organize, and optimize your showings and your tours. Utilize the agent-only information like showing instructions and integrations with Showing Time and other platforms to simplify the process and keep all of your information in one place. Zenlist in-app chat functionality allows you to not only chat with your clients, but also other agents and even groups of agents that are also utilizing Zenlist. Listing insights and reverse prospecting is built into your account directly, and seller reports can be shared with your clients directly from Zenlist. And you can even create a custom public profile for lead generation, prospecting to your future clients in a way that's built specifically for real estate agents. You can learn more at zenlist.com or follow us on socials to stay connected, and we'll see you there.
Excellent. So with that, we'll get today rolling. Let's make sure we've got everyone on. Hi, everyone. I'm Jay Pepper Martins, the CTO for the association, and I work with Hud Bixler. Hud?
Hey, everybody. Nice to see you on this fine Friday afternoon in San Francisco. Looking forward to discussing quite a few fun, if not informative items, specifically talking about security and also our MLS and something that happened maybe the last 45 days. I can't remember, Jay. I'm not sure what happened the last 45 days.
Geez,
something
what was that? I guess,
something definitely did happen.
Happened in August. That's true. So after we're done talking about what happened, Hud's right. We're going to talk about some of the post attack. Like, what are we doing now? How are we building parallel systems? What are we doing to make sure that this can't happen to you again? And we'll finally end with that. What we hope is fun session on security. So why don't you take it away, Hud, and let's just quickly review for those who maybe haven't heard us talk about it yet. Let's hit the high spots for what happened in August, or the low spots, as it were.
Absolutely. Well, we're always trying to make lemonade over here at the MLS. So you are aware the cyber attack against the Rapatoni Corporation took place late in the evening, Tuesday, August 8th. From what we are told, this happened somewhere between midnight and 3 or 4 a.m. The way these cyber attacks happen is malware can lay dormant for a period of time until they find the opportunity to strike. Those are the extent of the details we have. Rapatoni is a private corporation, so they are obviously keeping that information to themselves, and they are also working with the FBI and their whole insurance company. So there's a whole lot of going on around that. But essentially, about 6 a.m. on Wednesday, the 9th, we received word that there is a issue with Rapatoni, and they were telling us that it was a networking or a routing issue. Which, if you remember, back in the day, we've seen some of these networking, large-scale networking and router issues affecting sites like Facebook, Google, even Microsoft, etc. So it's pretty clear that I love it when your phone rings in the middle of a presentation. So it was clear to us that, okay, this is sort of normal standard operating procedure, not a big deal. These type of things happen. As the course of the day wore on, it was about noon or 1, Jay and I were talking to ourselves like, this doesn't seem like just a standard networking or routing issue. Lo and behold, that evening, we found out via a text message and a phone call with the Rapatoni CTO that in fact it was a ransomware attack. That's the kind of phone call conversation where your stomach just drops. I don't know about you, Jay, but you and I and Walt were
it was pretty bad. We certainly felt like, oh no, this can't possibly be what's really happening.
True.
So but it wasn't actually until the 11th when we got a formal confirmation. Like, that's when all of the MLSs that had been affected and people who had other systems from Rapatoni were all notified. So on the 11th is when we really understood what was going on, and that's when we had to turn around and tell members something. So it was on the late on the 10th, early on the 11th, when we were finally able to start communicating to members. But as you say, Rapatoni wasn't able to give us a lot of the detail to share. So
That's right.
we could only share what we knew, and what we knew is that we were offline, and that, you know, maybe we would be up after the weekend, but there was no guarantees, and we wouldn't know for sure for days.
And the goalpost kind of just kept getting moved forward to the point of that Friday, that weekend, when we started realizing that we had to take some more direct action to try to create a marketplace for our agents. We communicated on a daily basis. We had update information available, and one of the things that we committed that we weren't going to sort of lay out the possibilities. We're going to only go with concrete hard facts that we received, and we were at sort of the mercy of Rapatoni at that point. It's noted that around August 21st, key steps were completed. We were committed that we could launch the MLS, bring the MLS back online in whatever shape it was, just as long as we could bring it online to do business on August 23rd. And we immediately started the process of communicating that. And as you are well aware, that on August 23rd, we did come back up and running. There was still restoration and things that needed to come back online, specifically photos and some other items. So what we're looking at is a total system downtime of about 14 days between August 8th and the 23rd. That's well within the 99.9% of downtime that Rapatoni has within our contract. That doesn't mean we aren't continually having negotiations and discussions with Rapatoni about that. But yeah, that's the long and short of it. About 14 days of downtime, and let's get into sort of what happened. What we did in the midst of sort of unprecedented crisis, Jay.
Yeah. So, and please know that when we're giving you these answers and explanations today, we fully recognize that that was a pretty brutal time for all of you, for all of your businesses. The solutions we put in place were really meant to be emergency measures. We understand completely that for some people, it didn't meet their expectations or didn't meet their needs. Nonetheless, we were able to put a parallel system in place with a partner that we had been working with. And we're able to look at making sure that at least 700 listings were managed through the system that we had set up, to the tune of a little over $1 billion in inventory value, 2 broker tours. The first one hacked together just using spreadsheets.
That was funny. Fun. Yeah, I mean that was a sort of just a necessity, right? We that first weekend we're like, well, we have a broker tour coming up on Tuesday. We have to do something. So we essentially went through the process of setting up a Google form to make sure that we could intake broker tour requests. Also, you could add tour requests to Zenlist, and we made sure that both on August 15th and August 22nd, you received a PDF with 151 and 189 properties. Those are also available in Theo and in Zenlist. So you did have electronic versions of that. And then the continuing ongoing support, I think, is key that we got from Zenlist, and also sort of our stats, Jay.
Yeah, so during the outage, we actually had to emergency onboard 500 more SFAR agents. And then Barry's realized that, hey, the other mechanisms they maybe had been using weren't going to be as full featured as what Zenlist had. They joined us in that effort so that we had a bigger nexus of listing volume being transacted. So 800 Barry's agents were also onboarded during those 2 weeks. And their support team worked most days 12 hours, many days 16 hours over the weekend. Our teams came in weekends to try to help people. Long story short, it was a horrible 2 weeks. But some work did get done, and we're proud of the work that everyone did, fully recognizing that in some cases it just was not enough. But yeah.
And it's true. I mean, yeah, go ahead, Jay.
I was just going to say, so now that we're outside of the danger zone and things are back up and running, we're starting to ask the hard questions of what do we do now? What happened is sort of the first question you need to ask. If you're going to figure out where to go next, you should stop and examine exactly what happened. So HUD and I, with help from leadership, the executive committee, the executive level at SF, Walt, determined that there were many points of failure, and all of them really broke down to the fact that Rapatoni was our sole provider for all of these key things. At the end of the day, they were the only one that could provide us with data distribution, listing management, and all of the other good stuff.
And what's important is when we look at these, we're going to show you a couple of graphics in a minute to kind of illustrate, what we have, what's coming, and et cetera. But really, if you think about data distribution, what that really means is that all of your listings are inputted into one system currently and distributed out of that same system. So it's sort of an obvious point of failure that we're looking at adjusting. We've already made some actual adjustments here. So if we're looking at this pre-incident, Jay, I think it's best if you give you've actually been here around a little bit longer than I have, so you have some more history in terms of the Rapatoni setup and the data share and all that. Please.
Sure. So the core MLS system delivered to us by Rapatoni really does send all that data everywhere. And this was the pre-incident layout. There's one set of mechanisms that transmits data to pretty much everywhere where you see the listing data today. So whether it's your broker back office, whether it's an app that you're using that you maybe have paid for, or a member tool that we're including as a member benefit, all of these get the data from Rapatoni MLS using Rapatoni distribution technologies. We've also built this custom piece that lets us do data synchronization with all the other MLSs of the Bay Area. So this is the way it looked pre-incident, but we had actually started to do something, right, Hud?
Yeah, we did. So I think towards the end of 2022, we recognized that technology was moving in a direction that was supporting a third-party data distribution. You see down in the middle area there, there's the Bridge Zillow API. It's an API that distributes, and hundreds of MLSs and vendors use this product. Basically, you have the data that's going from the MLS is fed to Bridge, and that data is then distributed, as you can see on the right-hand side. So we had already started that process. We had only had maybe 20% of our vendors and brokers set up on that Bridge API. This is the technology that allowed us during that outage to shift the data input flow, so it wasn't coming from Rapatoni, to have it actually come from Zenlist. And then Zenlist was able to flow that data to the Bridge API, and we were at least able to get our properties and open houses and broker tours, et cetera, onto the Zenlist app, of course, onto Zillow, as well as onto Redfin. Now imagine if we had all of our 150 plus vendors and brokers on the Bridge API. It would have been a different story. That would have allowed for the distribution of our data to go to all of our vendors and partners. And so what we're doing right now is this process is we are moving all of our vendors and our brokers and any of our data consumers, media as well, to the Bridge API. That project should be finished by the first part of next year. Our target goal is Q1 2024 to have everybody moved over. It is not an insignificant process. Many of these technology companies have sort of hardwired their systems for years. So it is taking some persuasion, but certainly having a cyber attack where they didn't have any data for 2 weeks is part of a negotiating strategy, shall we say. It's getting us there. But now we're going to move on to sort of the distribution and data share components of this, and where we think we can build a bedrock system that is distributed, that is available on multiple fronts, and not just dependent upon one single vendor. Jay?
Yeah, so like Hud said, the Bridge API will serve data to everyone externally, and we're going to use these APIs to wire the systems together so that in the event that the SFARMLS core system is unavailable, Zenlist will be able to use that same set of APIs to distribute data through Bridge. It'll go to all of the different websites, including everything you might use for an IDX website, for your tour apps from Theo or from Zenlist itself, or from any of your brokerage websites. And of course, we eventually want to move our data share components to be resilient in this way too. So in the future, everything will be able to run off of a set of APIs that can be decentralized out of the MLS system.
That's the word. Yeah, decentralized is the key word, Jay.
That's right. So long story short, it's going to be a lot of work to get us to the point where that will be possible, but it's already in progress and it will be done by early next year. So that only takes care of the data distribution side of it. There's actually all of the other stuff, the adding of a listing, the scheduling an open house. What if you have to cancel an open house? That all has to happen.
That's right.
So it turns out that the MLS system consists of 3 really important layers. One is the layer you're all very familiar with today. It's the user interfaces. That's what you call Rapatoni, or you call it just the MLS. It's really the interfaces that you're seeing. The interfaces use business logic. That's all of the MLS rules, the SFARMLS rules and regulations that are used to govern what happens with the data. And then finally, there's the underlying application layer. That's the MLS system itself and all of its data and databases. And of course, there's kind of like a fourth piece there, which is the idea of the backup system. And the way it had been working, the way it works today is a single stack, right? Had everything as one vendor. Everything here is Rapatoni, right?
That's right. It's all contingent upon Rapatoni systems being up and running. The one thing that we actually didn't mention is it was not only the MLS system, but it was our back end membership management. Both those products are Rapatoni products, so both of those were impacted during those 2 weeks. And we're going to illustrate here that this is sort of the area that we're focusing on is decoupling all of our systems to one particular vendor. Now, I wouldn't say all of our systems are under Rapatoni. We certainly have the Clarity dashboard, and we have a number of member benefits that were fully functional during this outage.
That's true. But the one thing all of those other interfaces lack is the ability to take your listing off of Broker Tour or
That's
to
true.
change the order of your photos. Nothing really facilitated listing management at all, except for the system. So when the main system went down, and you started to see this effect where the system's down, the rules can't be interpreted, the interfaces are just not available. Now no one is capable of doing anything. All of the functions of the MLS stop. And this is the thing that we need to work around is how do we get it so that this cannot happen again? Well, the answer is to break it apart into those various pieces that I talked about a moment ago, and that these pieces are all wired together using those APIs. So instead of one vendor doing everything in that single stack, we'll have a core MLS system. It'll still have that legacy MLS interface, which will be probably from the same vendor, Rapatoni. But those APIs will also allow us to implement modern MLS interfaces that have a copy of the MLS rules and a mirror of all the data locally, so that in the event that something happens, that they'll be more resilient. Also, we're going to use a third party for backup going forward so that we have a outside of the MLS backup system that, again, isn't reliant on the sort of sole sourced vendor solution. But why don't we do this exercise again and talk about where you could do stuff in this model? So maybe you want to add a listing just using the legacy MLS interface, but later on you want to edit it. Well, now you can edit it using the modern interface or the new ones that'll be the distributed model. Maybe you want to use that new one to send to a client. You want to send a link to a listing. But maybe you want to go back and put it on tour, but you only have your laptop available. So you might use your laptop.
Or you have your mobile device, for example, right?
Exactly.
You need to be able to. We live in a mobile world. Let's not forget that, right? So most of your work up to the point of writing a contract, I don't think anyone has solved the writing a contract from your mobile device. But up to that point, a lot of the work, the expectation is that you can work mobilely, and we're offering that as a facility here.
That's right. So if we go through this exercise again and look at what happens if the core system fails, well, okay, so if the MLS system goes down under this distributed model, then the APIs become unavailable for updating those modern interfaces, and the legacy interface goes away. But you can continue to use the standalone modern interface for doing all of those activities. And so some of this worked during the outage, didn't it, Hud?
It did. It was just limited in terms of the distribution and the access. I don't think wasn't necessarily realistic for us to expect that, in a few days' notice, everybody is going to switch over to the Zenlist as their MLS. That is, many MLSs, when they move to a new service, it's 6 to 9 months in terms of getting people moved over to a new interface. So that kind of also begs to answer the question, well, why didn't we just move to a brand new MLS right in the middle of the outage?
Right.
Well, this is the reason why. It's a lot to set it up. It's a lot to have our agents move to a completely different interface. But I think what we can take away is what we did learn, what did work, is about 1,400 of you agents did move over to a system temporarily. Was it perfect? No, but what we also learned is that this distribution model can happen. All we need to do is increase the exposure and access. Not all we need to do. I'm not going to trivialize this, but one of the things that we're doing is making sure that we get our vendors and our brokers moved over to the Bridge API so that they have this alternative, as Jay is showing you. So imagine that this happened, but we had, our 150 downstream data providers access, and you had a way that you were familiar with a way to edit and add your listings and your broker tour, etc.
One of the things that we'll also look into doing here is, as we build parallel systems, we'll make sure that the backup strategy is compatible. So we normally would back up from the core MLS system. If that goes down and we see now that the edits are happening primarily in one of these other interfaces, we'll make sure that the backup strategy continues to back up the data from it, so that we're able to make sure that we don't lose anything going forward into the future. There's two
Absolutely.
questions. I'm going to take them both right now. The first question was, why didn't I see a certain vendor on the diagram before? There are over 150 different data connections from the MLS. I just sort of hit the highlights with some familiar logos. So if you didn't see your favorite vendor's logo there, please don't be offended. And then the second question was, in the event of a disaster, what sort of time frame will it take for data to be restored? So honestly, as long as we have resilient parallel systems, there won't be as much of a time crunch to get those systems back online, which means that we will have a little more of a luxury of time. Now, that said, 2 weeks was still far too long. And so one of the things we'll be working on with any vendors we choose going forward is understanding what their disaster recovery timeframes will be, so that we have a more clear understanding of what will be the impact to members in the event of another failure.
That's true. We'll be reviewing those contracts. We are currently reviewing the contracts with Rapatoni as we speak, to verify that their disaster recovery in the future is verifiable, and making sure that a technologist such as myself or Jay can get under the hood, so to speak, and verify that.
What's going to be great is once we succeed at this new model, it's going to mean that we could add other modern interfaces or allow applications that are already integrated with us that wish they could push data back into the system. We're going to be able to set them up and make sure they can do it in a secure way that's going to give you the options for using applications that you like. Some of them will have the ability to write data back to the MLS. And over time, we're going to find out that having multiple interfaces means we can meet you where you're working. You may use the MLS to add the listing, and then you might use one of the lightweight interfaces to add an open house to your listing, and then you might use a third application to update the status or maybe change your closing details when the listing gets sold.
I mean, the key word you used that may have been missed here is writing back to the MLS. We are launching for the first time at SFAR the ability to write back to the MLS right now. That's happening. We'll discuss that a little bit further. But the point is that this is opening up. I like to look at disasters, et cetera, as an opportunity. And this really did open up an opportunity. We are wide open in the way that we were thinking about this now. As a matter of fact, we've been going to conferences the last month, and Jay's going to be out at Rezo, and I'll be at NAR as well. And everybody in the entire MLS industry, in the real estate industry, is talking about distributed databases, backup, redundancy, all of those things. So we are not alone. The benefit to us not only discussing in this with you, our agents, and our technology peers, is that there's going to be different ideas and really robust discussions that both Jay and I are going to be a part of, as well as Walt, at these leadership conferences. So, you know, it's taking, like I said at the beginning, lemons into lemonade, taking and learning from what happened, and building a more resilient and more modern interfaces. I'll say interfaces, not just interface, Jay. Right?
That's right. That's exactly it. So the long and the short of it is that we've done some deep analysis now, and we've understood that there's really going to be three pieces to making sure that the MLS system has greater resilience going forward. The first was the aforementioned decentralization of the distribution of data, so that in the event that the core MLS system is unavailable, as long as we can push updates into the distribution system, it can still distribute data to all the places where you're using data today. The second one is breaking up those MLS layers to distribute the functionality, giving you multiple interfaces that you can use. And then, of course, this robust backup. And we've already got some work started there, don't we, HUD?
We do. You know, we're working with our team members, we call them is an inside the MLS partnership. This company called Zenlist that you may have heard of. Of course, we've mentioned quite a few times. But really, what is unique in my 20 years in this business, Jay, you're about there with me. Walt's 43 years.
Yes.
So this is one of the first times we found a software provider that is open to making quick changes. They are a software company that understands it's important to localize the data experience, as you've seen when you're using the product. So we're going to continue to work with them and other vendors that are out there and our other MLS data partners. It should be mentioned that our data share partners are thinking about this now too. Okay, we built the data share in 2020. What's data share 2.0? How do we make sure we have resiliency and redundancy and all of those things? So it is a collective of 7 MLSs at least working to build this out, and working with partners such as Zenless and others out there to build this ad edit. And one of the things that we're excited about is the ad edit ability for you to edit listings is coming in November. So in November, you're going to be able to, with your mobile device or even the web interface for Zenlist, you're going to be able to edit any of your listings. That's going to be updating pictures, updating broker tour, public marks, private marks, status, all of that, and all with our San Francisco MLS rules. So making sure that you stay within compliance as you make those updates. We also looked at a laundry list of improvements or feedback that they took from many of the San Francisco agents in terms of things they'd like to change. And I'll address a question that just came in. Someone says, I'd really love to be able to just send a listing to a client like I do in prospecting the MLS, but maybe my client is not ready to adopt a new platform. We understand this. Your clients might be on Redfin or Zillow or your brokerage website, but when you're in the MLS, you like to just send a listing link or whatnot. That feature is coming in a few weeks already. So that hopefully is good news to the MLS participant who asked that question, but that's coming in a couple of weeks. What is also coming, as that we just are noticed down here, is we'll be launching the ad edit, which is something we committed to, and it was going to be available this summer. It kind of was available this summer, Jay, during an outage, but it wasn't exactly its best. It wasn't a showcase moment, shall we say.
That's right. But we did use that period. I mean, a lot of agents had to onboard really quickly. And so what HUD was talking about, the taking in of feedback, lots of the things that you're going to see go live for you in November actually came from your real feedback. You were like, I have to use this thing because I'm stuck. It doesn't let me send a listing to my client. So like that one example is a good example of us seeing what you used and didn't use inside the app and making sure that that'll make it into the app in the launch in November.
I mean, the MLS is, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
There was another good question here about, can my office or brokerage use the web API? And the answer is yes. We have a way for you to sign up to get the API. We do, of course, make sure that it's a brokerage that's asking. We don't give APIs directly to just sole agents underneath a brokerage. You have to get your broker to sign up to get a data feed from us. There's a question. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say there's a question from Donna as well about decentralizing and security.
So the decentralization and security work really well hand in hand. When you decentralize and use APIs, there are authentication keys and mechanisms in place to make sure that only the right people have the ability to write to the database. And how Zenlist will work is if you are signed into the Zenlist app and you change the status on your listing, when you go into the MLS and look 3 hours later or 3 minutes later, it'll show up that it'll say you, whoever you were that logged into your Zenlist app, updated the status, and the history in the listing will still be you. So when you authenticate using these applications, you're actually authenticating as yourself.
And you will find for certain things like updating status and price and whatnot, you will need, the first time you do that, even though you've already logged into the app, once you're starting to manage listings, you'll need to authenticate again. And we may adjust some of these security parameters, but that right there is forcing you to log in one more time, authenticate one more time, so then you then have access to add and edit your listings. There's a whole list of other features that are coming on board, and we're going to do a launch party sometime in the middle of November before Thanksgiving. Hopefully we'll maybe even be able to do it in person. We can all, collectively, kind of sigh of relief, maybe have a beverage or two and take a look at the product roadmap that we're seeing. Some of the things high level, full CMAs built right out of the Zenlist product, the ad edit we already discussed, the ability to send those immediate those properties individually. Also, the ability to select just a few properties that you just want to send kind of as a folder, as what you've been used to doing in the MLS. One of the things that Jay and I and the MLS and tech team are being very careful about is not, we're not trying to replicate all the features and functionalities that you have in Rapatoni. There's a lot of dense features that are available. Some of them are used daily, some of them are not. So we're really taking the feedback from hundreds, if not thousands of agents, from the things they'd actually really like to see in an alternative application that's accessing the MLS data. Should we pause
Awesome.
for
So
any
I think
additional questions, Jay, before we move on?
I don't see any open right now.
I don't
and
either.
we do want to cover some content on security. So why don't we jump to that now? But if you do have other questions about MLS or about ZenList, please do put them in the Q&A window and we'll come back to them at the very end. Also, when we jump into this next section on security, we're going to ask you to use the chat window if we ask you to make some responses. So I'm going to turn on the chat window for all attendees can chat with everyone. So now you're going to be able to type things into the chat window. What we're going to do is we're going to have a little fun with some questions and answers. We're also going to give you some really good information along the way, and we'll wrap up with something I think is valuable, HUD.
Yeah, and I love the tagline, the slide before, an uncomfortable conversation about
Right.
security. We're a little tongue in cheek here. We've both Jay and I have been in the technology and security business for a period of time, and we're used to having to have multiple authentications for our access to secured systems, as well as changing our passwords on a regular basis, using passkeys and all that stuff. So and what you're going to find in this conversation, we hope, is that you're kind of already doing a lot of these things. It's not that much of a move over to more increased security, and we're going to help you in this conversation, and also give you sort of a to-do list, if you will, an to-do list, Jay, when we are done with our session.
Right on. So let's start off with the first question. And again, please go ahead and use the chat window if you know the answer. Question number 1 is, should I use a common or same password across many applications? Let's give everyone half a second. So this one's actually meant to be like just a starter question. The answer is, of course, unequivocally no. Definitely no. It's a known bad practice, and we're going to show you some reasons why it is in a second. But there are some things that'll make it easier for you to manage all these different passwords.
Like using a password manager, using passphrases to access that password manager, and biometric, we call those passkeys. Biometric is this face that you see here, and your finger, all these different types of things. But we're gonna show you a couple things here. There's one thing to keep in mind: using a password manager. There's several of them that are out there, but really, what is the real point, Jay? I mean, you need to use them, and should you use like 3 or 4 of them?
Right. And so the answer is, and this is like many things, sure, one of them might have a feature or not that another one doesn't, but pick one and stick with it. So if you're an Apple ecosystem user, maybe you have an iPhone and a Mac laptop, you should be using, they call it passwords now, but it was legacy called keychain. You should be using the keychain features of your devices. That should be one of your primary places to manage your passwords. It'll even generate, complex passwords for you. Maybe you don't use Macs, though. Maybe you're just on a combination of Windows and Android devices, or even an iPhone and a Windows computer. And so you might use something like LastPass.
And the great thing about LastPass is, I'm a LastPass user. With your iOS device, you can actually make a choice to say, no, I only want to use LastPass. I don't want to use the Apple keychain. So you do have those choices. But I think it's important to note, you can also get to a situation where you have too many password managers. Like you have the Google password manager in the Chrome browser, and you have LastPass, and you have iCloud. Just pick one that you're comfortable with. The other thing that is great about these password managers is they also have an MFA, or 2-factor authentication. So even to get into your password manager, you're going to use biometrics, which would be your face or your finger, etc.
Right on. And one of these applications, in fact, almost all of these applications also give you the ability to do a checkup. And this is going to show up in our checklist at the end. But what we want to make sure you're aware of is that if you use Chrome, the Google web browser, and maybe you're using Google's password manager, it actually has a function in it that will do a checkup for you. It will check the known databases that are available on the dark web that are sort of known to be out in circulation. It will check to see if your email address exists there. It'll check to see if any of the passwords that it knows are found somewhere out there. So you can see here in this one, the Chrome password manager found, looks like 209 instances of things you should check. And in this
Someone's
example
using their
here,
dog's name as a password,
right,
probably, Jay.
right.
I'm thinking it's someone's dog's name.
Or three of their children's names put together, whatever.
Right, and a date. Yeah.
Yep. And then you can see here someone with Keychain has found that there's 145 recommendations. And so these are the things like, this is a known email address with a password combo. It's been found in a database. You shouldn't be using it on these websites. So this is something where we really think you should check into these. And when you see them, don't just dismiss them. Those are serious warnings.
It's true. And if I can, a funny story is, I didn't even tell you this, Jay. I was riding my bike home yesterday and I got a text message. Message was from Capital One and said, "Did you order a $4,500 rental of an RV in Las Vegas?" And I'm saying, I'm actually on Wisconsin riding my bicycle right now. So first of all, I pulled over to take the text, guys. I wasn't looking at my phone while I was riding my bike. But it turns out that card was compromised and I had almost $8,000 of charges on that. Mandalay Bay and, Wingstop of all places in different parts of the country. So fraud is real, fraud is happening. We're trying to help you protect. And it's not just the applications that you might use, like such as a passkey. It's also the websites that you use, your banking sites. Any banking site these days is requiring two-step authentication through text messaging. Oftentimes, if you need to change anything on your bank account, they make you use the app to then verify your identity. So it's all about verifying your identity. And we're going to talk about passkey tech next.
Yeah, this is a really cool thing. You've probably heard us mention this a couple of times, and you might be hearing it on the internet now. What are these passkeys? Well, the definition of a passkey is it's a unique digital credential that's really tied to you and some of your devices. So this is often using some kind of a biometric thing, which we're going to talk about in a second, and then combined with strong cryptographic techniques that identifies you. This kind of thing is way stronger than just 12 letters, random combination of numbers and symbols. But why don't we jump into our...
Go ahead. Let's go to the next question. Yeah, let's go to the next question because this is a fun one. So,
yeah, I like this one too.
What are the 4 most common types of biometric identifiers used as passkeys in this case? So get your fingers out there and do some chatting here. Let's hear what are the 4 most common types of biometric identifiers. If you were listening earlier, I mentioned a couple of them already.
That's right. And I think people don't realize how deep some of these biometric identifiers have become. There's actually a large list of what can be used. So taking a look at these answers, not seeing a whole lot in the chat. Maybe people aren't sure what we're after. But taking a look at the answers, everyone knows about the fingerprint. That was sort of the very first one that people got familiar with, seeing their thumbprint on their iPhone. Of course, facial recognition is the new one where we hold up our phones to our faces and it does a scan. But voice recognition is an interesting one that people don't realize. How I often see this one used is when you talk to your phone. For my wife and I, when I tell my phone to do something, if I say, "Hey Siri," for example, my phone reacts, but her phone does not. And that's because the phones recognize each of our voices.
And RJ is a little tongue in cheek. He just copied our answers onto the chat. That's funny. Yeah, it's fingerprints of iris scans, palm. The one that I can't get over is the palm hand vein patterns. That's going to be interesting, but the ones that I use on a regular basis are going to be my fingerprint and my facial recognition and the voice recognition. No iris scans here to get into the SFARMLS, at least not at this point.
There's another one though that I'll just mention.
Is
there's a thing that measures your gait. So the devices we carry now can measure how even your steps are. And so that's another type of biometric identifier is, does it look like it's you holding your phone? And that's going
it's really about, it likes the way you walk. So it's basically going to then determine if it's in fact you. We got a second question here, or third question, security Q&A. Shall we jump into that?
Yeah, let's talk about it.
So this is a good one. Does the MLS send my password to vendors? Jay?
This one, I actually would love for people to take a guess. So
okay, let's do it.
If you have a second, please put in the chat window whether or not you think we send your password anywhere. Yeah, a couple of people fielding some responses. And what I'm loving is that those people are right. The answer is no, we don't send your plain text passwords anywhere. However, we do use single sign-on. And so why don't we talk about how that single sign-on technology works for just a second? I think people are getting familiar with the idea of, if I have my, I know my Google username and password, and I can use Google to sign in on places. That's single sign-on. And where are we using single sign-on inside the MLS technologies today, Hud?
We're using it at the Clarity dashboard. That's when you first log in to the MLS. You can save your username. And this is actually going to address a question that came up. Why can't I save my password in the MLS? We'll talk about that in just a moment. That's a level of security for access that we've turned off the ability to save the password. But there's a but there. There's something that we're going to be moving towards. But yeah, the Clarity dashboard did stay online during this whole outage, and it allowed you to get to Zenlist, of course, allowed you to get to RPR, which was our alternative for creating CMAs and also doing property research, tax database research, et cetera. It gets you into zip forms, into Glide, into InfoSparks, just a litany of other applications. What you'll notice is you don't have to, once you log into the MLS, you don't have to log into once you log into the Clarity dashboard, the single sign-on portal, you do not have to, again, relog into the MLS or relog into zip forms, etc. It passes your credentials securely through encryption keys through the internet to that receiving website that then takes that as identifies it as you. They're also called IDPs, identity provider.
That's right.
So that's two fancy words for basically securely passing your credentials from one application to another.
That's right. But again, just to recap, the answer is a no. We don't send your passwords out to anyone else on the internet. Question number 4, and this gets into sort of some more general security stuff, is why should anyone care about their email and communication security? I mean, who cares, right? I mean, I'm not doing anything in my
it's
email,
my stuff. It's just my stuff, man. I'm not doing anything bad on the internet. So, I change my password every 7 years. I'm cool.
Right. Well, it turns out that it's actually not just about you. If your email gets compromised and maybe one of your clients' emails gets compromised, well, now bad actors have access to your information and your client's information, and they will not act immediately. One of the things that we have learned over the last couple of years is that bad actors, hackers, they get access to systems and they just sort of hang out for anywhere between.
They're patient. They got their time. They do.
I mean, because if they do something really fast, maybe they annoy you. But if they bide their time and wait for you to use a word like, oh, I don't know, how about escrow?
How about escrow? And how about transfer of funds? Can I just tell a little story here, Jake? Because I think this is kind of topical. Please. So a few years ago, I was at this company called Zephyr that became Corcoran. So I spent a good almost 13 years there. And I initiated multi-factor authentication, which is a multi-factor, meaning that you could only log into your Google account, your G Suite account by utilizing a phone or a tablet device. Our policy was not an umbrella policy. Agents are independent contractors. Of course, you have your own email accounts. Some of you might still be using a Yahoo or an SBC account or even AOL. It's all possible. In this case, we had an agent that was using a personal Gmail account. So I didn't have any authority over that account, although I certainly spent a lot of time explaining the benefits of multi-factor authentication and security. Well, it turns out they got hacked. And someone, basically the bad actor was sitting in their inbox for a period of time. And then over the course of a period of time, they started learning, oh, this is a real estate agent. They're in the middle of a deal right now. So what ended up happening is one morning, the agent's clients received an email, and that email said, hey, wire your funds to this, and they had all the graphics for, I don't know which title company it was, and I'm certainly not going to tell you which agent or who it was, but the client actually wired $500,000 into an account, vanished. There's no way you're going to find that money. You're not going to find out who did that. But holy cow, it involved not only the insurance company for the brokerage, but also the title company and then the other brokerage. And it was a total mess. And this may be one of the reasons you see wire fraud is real at the bottom of all the emails circulating throughout San Francisco brokerages, because it is real. It did happen. And the one thing that would have stopped it would have been two-factor authentication. That bad actor would have never been able to get into that email and never been able to impersonate that. So we did say we weren't going to spook you today with some stories, but I guess we are, Jay. We are gonna spook you a little bit.
There's some real things that have happened. At the end of the day, so caring about your communication security, understanding what's going on, you really can't trust anyone. And of course, we're being a little tongue-in-cheek here. But you can trust, but the thing you must do is verify. So you can trust that general communication from known senders is, going to be correct and is not malicious, but you should recognize that your critical information, wire instructions, things like sending someone else your login information, don't transmit that putting your credit card number into a plain text document and emailing it. Recognize that that's critical information and it's really valuable to these bad actors.
And I think the third one is a big one, the verify. So
that's it.
So if in the scenario I just explained, if that client would have picked up the phone and called their agent and said, I just got this request for me to wire this money, that's the right thing to do, right? And that's what I'm supposed to do. Instead, they just continue their communication over email, and a little to the knowledge of the client, they're actually communicating with the bad actor. So always rely on a secondary channel before acting on monetary exchanges. I'm sure that your brokerage tells you this all the time, title companies, etc. But it is a really important thing to remember: trust, recognize, and verify.
Yeah, just the simple act of if you call boss. So we had our controller, one of our financial people inside the office, was told to buy a bunch of iTunes gift cards, Apple gift cards. So the first thing, of course, she does is she's like, hey, Walt, am I really supposed to do this? Walt's answer is no, of course not. And they just delete those emails and those go away. We don't have a problem. So again, it's no, you trust, but she verified. And so we avoided any kind of a problem.
Absolutely.
There's a good question here about what the effects of MFA, multi-factor authentication, are after a compromising. And so here's the unfortunate truth is if someone's gained access to your email, they now have all your contacts, email addresses, they've scanned all of your content. So while it's important that you then go, oh no, and put in multi-factor authentication so they can no longer get new information from your account, they've probably already downloaded everything from your account. This means you must be very careful now as you go forward. So it does secure the app and prevents the bad actor from getting back in. But a little bit of it is kind of like it's already left the barn, like you're closing the gate after the horses have escaped. So it's important to turn on these features now, not after something happens. And that's why we're going to have a checklist of them.
Right, exactly. And I think one point would be, if that does happen, you're going to have to bite the bullet and email your clients and say, I was hacked. You really should do that and let them know. And the same thing happens on social media. I've had to help my parents and others, I'm always, proselytizing, like, hey, even social media, you need to use multi-factor authentication. Otherwise, your page will get hacked. But there's so much more content to get through. We should definitely keep cooking.
Okay,
here.
Let's jump to the next question. This is one that's really relevant because it's happening in real time to some of our members and leaders today. Am I safe using public Wi-Fi? So maybe you travel lots. Do you guys travel through airports? Do you stay at hotels? Have you ever used public Wi-Fi? And so what do people think? Do people think that using those public Wi-Fi access points is safe? And of course, the answer to this one is another no. We're giving people a lot of bad news today. This is rough. Wi-Fi access points are not totally safe. Often they will be listened to by these bad actors. Someone will connect to that network, just listening to all the traffic that goes back and forth, airports and hotels. But what are some ways that you can mitigate this?
I mean, you can utilizing a VPN is a good way, but even moreover, we have these devices in our hands. The one that just annoyed me when I was in the middle of this presentation, we can tether to those devices. So that means you can use the internet connection that's on your phone. And remember, to get into your phone, it's biometric, right? You're using your thumbprint in some older phones, or you're using your face. So tether is better.
Tether is better.
Tether is better. Yeah. Okay.
I've got these new dental implants in, so I thought that would work well for me. Tether is better. So this actually happened to someone inside the company. So we were just at a conference. We were at CAR. A number of us were down in LA for the CAR conference. And while there, the CEO of the company, Walt Bukowski, his laptop was connected to an open Wi-Fi. Just briefly, he got in, connected it, very normal. And before he even had time to really start working at the computer, someone had tried to connect to it and had tried over 70 times to try to use his computer's credentials to log into other parts of our system. So we took some immediate action, locked down the system, got the problem resolved, and now we're on a policy now to use tethering to make sure.
What's also great is that one of the things we're not talking about is enterprise level security. So we have enterprise level security in all of our internal systems, which is why notifications came to Jay and ITS, which is our security service partners that we use right away. So we were able to get that information. So those of you that are working at companies that offer those services, offer any of those cybersecurity technical services, you should consider taking advantage of that.
Sign up for it.
It's less about Big Brother and more about someone protecting you to make sure that this does not happen.
That's right. So on the Android devices, look for something called tethering. On the iPhones, look for something called personal hotspot. On both of them, you'll be able to set up passwords, again, to make sure that other unauthorized devices can't connect. But one of the things you know for sure is that your phone is your phone. And if you connect your laptop to it to check your email, log into your bank, use your own personal device, use the data that you've got through it. It's just a way more secure way of.
Speaking of secure devices, right now I'm at home. I'm working from home. I'm using my own personal Wi-Fi. So I'm using Comcast as a provider, but I'm using my own personal wireless setup. Is that safe, Jay? Is that something that you mean?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the last question for today is literally, you got your new Comcast router, you just picked it up, you plugged it in, maybe you've just moved into a new apartment or bought a new home. You plug it in and you're just going to use the defaults, right?
That's fine. It's already done for me. It's already printed on the side of the device. I'm just going to use the defaults, Jay. That's safe, right? I can do that.
Yeah, so I wish that I could tell you that this was a completely safe thing, but again, this is on a sort of not totally. Here are some real problems that happen. Is the sticker that's on the side of your router device comes off of a sheet of stickers. Well, that sheet of stickers gets printed somewhere at Comcast. Those numbers get generated and then printed, and then somebody manually transfers them, or they get printed on the devices. Those can be stolen. And in fact, routinely, those sheets are found on the dark web, where people have illegally obtained them from distribution centers for devices, and they've uploaded them to the dark web. So now even your routers with the default passwords are not necessarily secure. What you should consider is, as soon as you can log into that device, you should go in and change the administrator password.
I'd even suggest utilize the customer service at Comcast or Sonic.
Make them do it.
Make them do it for you. Alternatively, like I did, I purchased a Eero system or even a Nest or other a different type of Wi-Fi setup, set it up with my phone, put in my own password, and now I'm the only one who knows the access to that information. So I really say not the default passwords. Even though back in the day when we needed to log into Linksys routers, it was really great to have that default password of password. That was 10 years ago. Times have changed.
And there are, of course, still ways to do that. So I changed the password immediately, and then 3 months later, I forgot it. Well, if I just reset the device to its factory settings, it will reload that default password, and then I immediately log into it, and I immediately change it again to another password I will not remember in 5 months. Just kidding. It is important that you change those passwords. Use a passphrase, maybe a lyric from a poem or a song that you really love. That's a good way to approach passwords. But so that's the end of our entertainment section. Why don't we talk about the actual to-do list?
Let's do it. So the to-do list. Here's what you should go away with today. If nothing else, maybe besides the security, that your MLS team and your leadership is on it in terms of the MLS of the future, securing our vulnerabilities, making sure that we have a distributed infrastructure, all those great things. You're going to hear a lot about that in the next several months, year. That's going to be our North Star, our focus. But in terms of security, here's what you should go away with today. Secure your stuff. Number one.
That's right.
Banking should never be the same password as anything else, period.
Full
Enabled,
stop.
full stop. enable 2FA, MFA, two-factor authentication, multi-factor authentication on any apps or services that support it. I mentioned social media. I mentioned your banking accounts. It's almost at this, and your email accounts, of course, and your company accounts. All of those are going to be requirements to secure yourself. Social media accounts are common vectors, of course, as well. What's the last stuff that we should be focusing on, Jay?
Well, let's get you to update your passwords and centralize it. If you're going to use Keychain, use Keychain. If you want to install LastPass and get really good at using it, really learn how it works and integrates with your phone and your laptop. Learn it, know it, and use it. The time has passed for us to be sort of like lazy about getting around to it. This is now mission critical. You've got to secure your own information. You are valuable. You transact large volume real estate. You must secure your stuff. Use Google Password Manager if you're a fan of Chrome. Maybe you have an Android phone and use a Chromebook. I mean, that's going to be the way to approach it. So make sure you attack those things. And then look at using passkeys where you can. Passkey tech is pretty cool, pretty new. So, go get, use Windows Hello. If you're on a Windows 10 or 11 laptop or desktop, it's got a thing in it that lets you use a fingerprint scanner on many devices, the camera that's attached to it. Some of them even support the idea of large 10-digit PIN numbers that you can type in quickly on the number pad. Mac OS and iOS, of course, have this face reading and fingerprint. Android supports all this technology too. So there's no reason not to.
And again, we're going back to, if you're traveling, use the personal hotspot on iOS or Android tethering. And now that we're talking about it, changing your MLS password is not such a bad idea. As a matter of fact, we have an initiative that's going to come out around the first couple of weeks of in November. We're going to ask you to change your passwords. We didn't want to do it during the outage. We wanted to do it once people were back, more comfortable, but we're going to require a password change, which also will lead us to be able to enable things like multi-factor authentication in the future. We will do that sometime next year. That will then allow you to potentially save passwords here and there that you weren't able to save before. But the caveat, or the give and take is, we want you to get more secure, but we'll help you with this technology to allow you to, quote unquote, save some of these passwords, only unlocking them with biometrics and items like that. And I hear that the astute J. Pepper Martins is actually going to be on a security panel soon. And I'd like to hear a lot more about that, Jay. What is this all about?
Right. So next week, I've been invited to speak with security expert Rob Schenk. He does cybersecurity advisory roles for companies. He's one of our contractors. He works closely with me on making sure that the premises is secure electronically. We're going to be speaking next week on October the 18th at 10 a.m. Pacific time. I think I can copy the URL and dump it into the chat window. If you'd like to come and check that out, please, you're more than welcome to do so. That's going to be on the 18th, and that'll be maybe about an hour long. It's web delivery, so you don't have to go anywhere to do it as we're doing today. Everything's online now, so you can attend that. So there's one other question that was asked that was a really good one. Donna was asking, should I log out of everything when I'm not using an app? And so there's really two approaches here. One is, if you're talking about your laptop computer, it's far better to lock it than it is to log out of everything on the laptop. So if you're on a Mac, it's lock my screen. If you're on a Windows computer, it's actually the Windows key L, means lock the laptop, lock the computer, and then you'll have to authenticate to it again to the operating system to get back into it. And it just blows my mind when I walk into offices today, do a short walk to someone's office, and maybe I'm there to conduct some business. All the computers are unlocked and nobody's sitting at them. They've got all their, green screens open, banking information open. I was in a car dealership the other day. Couldn't believe it. Every computer wide open. Why these aren't designed to lock if you're inactive for more than 5 or 6 minutes? Absolutely flabbergasting. So lock your own laptop. I know many of you are independent contractors. You own your laptop. You own your computer. Lock that stuff up.
Yeah, use passcodes. As inconvenient as you might think they are, it's really going to keep you safe. And look at that. We actually hit it right in the hour mark, Jay. So, nice. Nice amount of content. We really appreciate the questions. We haven't had a chance to actually do a security webinar in a while. I don't know if we've done one together yet, Jay. So I think this was
The
It's
last
great to
time
do
we
this.
did one, we did it separately. I did one for SFAR, and you were doing one for Zephyr, and this was
That's
back in
right.
2017. Yeah.
So now we're together. I say we consider doing this as an annual report and keep you guys secure. Our job is not only to keep the MLS up and running and give you the greatest state-of-the-art applications, provide you an incredible MLS support team, and also membership and accounting. All of us are using the similar systems to follow up on any of the issues that come through. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us. If you'd like a copy of the slide presentation, we can make that available. The YouTube, this video will be on our SFAR social channel. It's Friday at 2 o'clock. Probably not today. We'll probably get it out by Monday or Tuesday. But thank you so much for attending, and stay safe out there.
Everyone take care.